Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to Cheating Stories Hub. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world are you watching from right now. Let us know in the comments now. Let's dive into today's story. Chapter 1: The Beginning of the Storm. The dining room hummed with lively conversation, the clinking of glasses punctuating bursts of laughter. At the head of the table sat Robert, the steadfast patriarch of our family, holding up his wine glass with the air of someone who had seen it all and overcome every challenge. To family, Robert declared, his deep voice resonating across the room. No matter what comes our way, we stick together. The room echoed with enthusiastic agreement, and everyone raised their glasses high. I forced a smile and lifted my glass, even as an inexplicable tension settled in my chest. Something about the moment felt unnervingly fragile. Next to speak was my sister, Sarah, our family's self-proclaimed comedian. She launched into a hilarious story about how little Jamie had once called himself the king of the house at 5 years old. Everyone erupted into laughter, even Jamie himself, though he blushed and squirmed at the attention. My husband, Eric, chuckled deeply, a sound that warmed the room like a fire on a winter evening. Jamie, now 12, sat beside me. He was unusually quiet, his brown eyes darting around the room as if searching for something. His small hands gripped his napkin tightly. "You okay?" I whispered, squeezing his hand gently. He pulled away, suddenly standing. "I have something to say," he announced, his voice trembling yet filled with an unfamiliar strength. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to Jamie. Eric gave him an encouraging nod, his face glowing with fatherly pride. Jamie hesitated, looking down at his glass of water, as if it held the answers he sought. Then he straightened his shoulders and said, "I've been thinking about what family really means, about honesty and trust." Murmurs of approval rippled through the room. Eric beamed at him. I, however, felt my pulse quicken. Where was this going? "Mom told me not to say this," Jamie continued, his voice now clear and loud, "but I think this is the right time." I froze, my heart pounding as the room fell into a heavy silence. Eric's smile faltered, replaced with a look of concern. "What is it, buddy?" he asked, his tone gentle. Jamie's next words shattered the fragile peace like a hammer striking glass. "Mom hinted that my real dad might be sitting at this table." The sound of a fork clattering onto a plate broke the stunned silence. My father's hand hovered midair, his wine glass trembling. Eric's face twisted from confusion to shock, then to something far darker. My sister's mouth fell open, forming a silent gasp of disbelief. "Jamie," I exclaimed, my voice trembling. "Sit down. We'll talk about this later." But Jamie wouldn't be swayed. He turned to me, his small frame shaking with a mix of anger and desperation. "Why didn't you just tell me, Mom?" he demanded. Chaos erupted. Chairs scraped against the floor as everyone started talking at once. My father's deep voice boomed above the noise. "What is the meaning of this, Olivia?" Eric stood, his face flushed with anger as he pointed a shaking finger at me. "Olivia, what the hell is going on? What is Jamie talking about?" I opened my mouth, searching for an answer, but no words came. The walls of the dining room seemed to close in on me as everyone's eyes bore into mine. Eric's voice rose above the cacophony, sharp as a knife. "Is it true? Is there someone else?" Jamie's voice cut through the din, trembling but unwavering. "You told me not to ask questions, Mom, but I deserve to know the truth." My father slammed his palm on the table, silencing the room. "Olivia, you owe us an explanation," he said, his tone a mix of anger and disbelief. I can explain," I stammered, tears streaming down my face. "But not here. Not like this." "Then when, Olivia?" Eric snapped, his voice raw with betrayal. "When were you planning to tell me? Tell Jamie? Or were you just hoping this would never come out?" The weight of their expectations pressed down on me, suffocating and unrelenting. Jamie's wide eyes, filled with hurt and anger, locked onto mine, silently demanding the truth. Finally, I whispered, "It's complicated." Eric laughed bitterly, shaking his head. "Complicated? You call this complicated?" His voice broke, and for the first time, I saw tears in his eyes. "You've lied to me. You've lied to him. For 12 years. I thought I was protecting him." I cried, my voice cracking. "I didn't want to hurt anyone." Jamie's small voice rose above the chaos, steady and resolute. "But you did, Mom. You hurt everyone." Chapter 2: The Eruption. The room remained in chaos after Jamie's bombshell. Eric paced furiously at the far end of the dining room, his hands running through his hair, his face alternating between pale and red with fury. My father stood stiffly, his jaw set in a firm line as though bracing himself for whatever storm was brewing. My mother, ever the peacemaker, sat frozen, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Olivia, this is your moment to clear this up," my father said sharply, breaking the tense silence. "Whatever this is, it needs to end here and now." I don't know what to say," I stammered, the walls closing in on me. "Jamie, I didn't mean for this to—" "You didn't mean for this to what?" Eric interrupted, his voice dripping with disbelief. "Come out? Be revealed in front of everyone? You didn't mean for our son to find out like this?" Jamie, still standing, refused to back down. "I deserve the truth, Mom," he said, his voice trembling. "You told me to stay quiet, but I can't anymore." "Is it true? Is someone else my dad?" My heart felt like it was being ripped apart as I looked into Jamie's tear-streaked face. "I don't know," I admitted, the words barely audible. Eric froze mid-step, his head snapping toward me. "What did you just say?" he asked, his voice dangerously calm. "I don't know," I repeated, louder this time, my voice breaking. I thought I knew, but I don't. You don't know." Eric's words were a mix of rage and disbelief. "How is that even possible, Olivia? You've had 12 years to figure this out, and you don't know." "I didn't think it mattered." I cried, the weight of my guilt crashing over me. "You were there for him. You raised him. I didn't want to drag up the past and risk ruining everything." "Risk ruining everything." Eric's laugh was bitter and hollow. "Congratulations, Olivia. You've done just that." Jamie stepped forward, his small frame trembling but defiant. "Who, Mom?" he demanded. "Who could it be? You have to know." I couldn't look at him. My eyes darted around the room, meeting the accusing stares of my family. My brother, Chris, looked as though he'd been punched in the gut. My cousin Andrew was pale, his hands trembling as he gripped the edge of the table. Even my sister Sarah, who never took anything seriously, looked genuinely shaken. Eric's gaze followed mine, and his eyes narrowed. "Is it someone here?" he asked, his voice low and deadly. "Is Jamie's real father sitting at this table right now?" "No," I protested, shaking my head vehemently. "I don't think so." "I mean, you don't think so?" Eric's voice rose sharply. "That's not good enough, Olivia. You need to be sure." Jamie turned, his tear-filled eyes scanning the room. "Is it you?" he asked suddenly, pointing at Andrew. The room fell silent, all eyes turning to him. "What?" "No." Andrew stammered, his face going red. "That's ridiculous." "Andrew's right," I said quickly, desperate to diffuse the tension. "It's not him. I'm sure of that." Eric's eyes darted between Andrew and me, suspicion etched on his face. "And how do you know that, Olivia?" he asked coldly. "Because you've been so honest about everything else." "I just know." I snapped, my frustration boiling over. "I don't have all the answers, okay? But I know it's not Andrew." "Then who?" Jamie demanded, his voice breaking. "Who is it, Mom?" I hesitated, the truth clawing at my throat. There was a name buried deep in my memories, a shadow from my past that I had spent years trying to forget. But saying it aloud felt like opening Pandora's box. Once it was out, there would be no going back. There's a chance. I began, my voice trembling. It might be someone I knew before I met Eric. Eric stiffened. Who? He asked, his tone icy. I took a deep breath, my chest tightening with every word. His name was Michael, I said finally. He was someone I dated briefly before you, and I got together. The room was deathly silent, the weight of my confession pressing down on everyone. Jamie's expression shifted from anger to confusion. Where is he now? He asked. Can we find him? I don't know, I admitted, my voice cracking. I haven't seen or spoken to him in years. Eric's bitter laugh broke the silence. Of course you don't, he muttered. Why would anything in this mess be easy? I'll find him, I said quickly, desperation seeping into my voice. I'll do whatever it takes to get answers. You better, Eric snapped, his voice hard as steel. Because if you don't, Olivia, I'm done. His words hit me like a blow. Jamie looked at me with a mixture of hope and despair, and for the first time, I realized just how much I had let him down. I had to fix this, not just for him, but for all of us. And deep down, I knew the journey was only beginning. Chapter 3. The Search Begins. The house was cloaked in an eerie silence in the days following that explosive dinner. Eric barely spoke to me, his presence the storm cloud of simmering anger and betrayal. Jamie spent most of his time in his room, shutting me out with the same resolute determination he had shown at the table. My family members had scattered, leaving me alone to confront the mess I had created. I stared at my laptop, a search engine open, my hands trembling as I hovered over the keyboard. Where would I even start? Michael was little more than a faded memory, a name attached to a face I hadn't seen in over a decade. I had no contact information, no idea where he lived, and no clue if he'd even want to be found. But Jamie deserved answers, and Eric's ultimatum hung over me like a guillotine. Finally, I began typing. I entered Michael's full name, which I could barely remember, and hit search. Dozens of results appeared, but none seemed promising. I scrolled endlessly, frustration and panic mounting as I clicked on profiles and pages that led nowhere. Still nothing. Sarah's voice startled me. I hadn't even heard her come in. I glanced up at my sister, who was leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. She looked uncharacteristically serious. I don't know where to start, I admitted, my voice shaking. It's like searching for a ghost. Sarah stepped closer, pulling up a chair beside me. Do you have anything to go on? Old friends? Mutual connections? I shook my head. He left town years ago. I didn't keep in touch with anyone from that time. She sighed. Well, you're not going to find him sitting here refreshing Google. Maybe start by reaching out to people who knew him back then. I hesitated. The idea of digging into my past felt like reopening old wounds, but Sarah was right. I couldn't do this alone. I'll try, I said, though my voice lacked conviction. That evening, I forced myself to make the first call. It was to an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years, a mutual acquaintance of Michael's from back when our lives had briefly intertwined. My heart pounded as the phone rang, each second stretching unbearably long. Hello, a familiar voice answered. Claire. It's Olivia, I said hesitantly. It's been a while. There was a pause, then a cautious, Olivia? Wow, I wasn't expecting to hear from you. How have you been? I skipped the pleasantries, diving straight into the reason for my call. I need your help. I'm trying to find someone, Michael Hayes. Do you remember him? Claire's silence was deafening. When she finally spoke, her voice was wary. Michael, why are you looking for him after all this time? It's a complicated, I admitted. I just need to know if you have any idea where he might be. There was another long pause before she said, the last I heard, he moved out of state. Colorado, I think. But that was years ago. Do you have any way to contact him? An address, a number, anything? No, I'm sorry. We lost touch a long time ago. My heart sank. Thanks anyway, I said, trying to mask my disappointment. Olivia, Claire said, her tone softening. Whatever this is about, I hope you find the answers you're looking for. I hung up, feeling no closer to a resolution. But at least I had a starting point, Colorado. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Underscore 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 underscore. The next morning, I called every resource I could think of, old colleagues, distant friends, even social media connections. Each conversation led to another thread of vague information, and slowly, a picture began to form. Michael had settled in Denver and started a small business. He had married once but was now divorced. Finally, after hours of digging, I found what I'd been searching for, business listing with Michael's name and contact information. My hand shook as I stared at the screen. This was it. The answers Jamie deserved, and the confrontation I'd been dreading, were just a phone call away. But as I reached for my phone, doubt crept in. What if he didn't want to talk to me? What if this made everything worse? I took a deep breath, dialing the number before I could second-guess myself. It rang twice before a voice answered. "This is Michael." For a moment, I couldn't speak. Hearing his voice after all these years sent a jolt through me. "Michael, it's Olivia," I said finally, my voice barely above a whisper. There was a pause, then a wary, "Olivia? Well, I haven't heard from you in forever. What's going on?" I swallowed hard. "Michael, I need to talk to you. It's about something important. Can we meet?" Okay," he said, his confusion evident. "Sure. What's this about?" "I'll explain everything when we meet," I said quickly, not trusting myself to say more over the phone. "Are you in Denver?" "Yeah, I am. How about tomorrow afternoon? I can meet you at my office." "That works," I said, relief washing over me. "Thank you." As I hung up, a strange mix of emotions churned in my chest. Relief, fear, and the crushing weight of what lay ahead. The next step was set in motion, and there was no turning back. Tomorrow I would face Michael, and with him the truth that had eluded me for so long. Chapter 4: The Meeting. The next day dawned with an oppressive weight in the air, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. As I got ready for my meeting with Michael, my hand shook. The stakes were higher than they had ever been. This wasn't just about me anymore. It was about Jamie, about Eric, and about the fragile pieces of my family that could still be salvaged. Jamie and Eric barely acknowledged me as I moved around the house that morning. Jamie avoided my eyes, his silent disapproval cutting deeper than any words could. Eric didn't speak, though his expression said everything: anger, hurt, and disappointment. I didn't try to explain myself or reassure them. Not until I had something concrete to say. The drive to Denver felt endless, each mile a reminder of how far I had fallen. Michael's business was located in a modest office building in a quiet part of town. I parked outside, taking a moment to steady myself. My heart pounded as I walked up to the entrance and pushed open the glass door. Inside, the space was simple but welcoming. A young receptionist looked up from her desk and smiled. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Michael Hayes," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "We have an appointment." She nodded and gestured toward a small waiting area. "He'll be out in just a moment. Please have a seat." I sank into one of the chairs, my nerves fraying with every passing second. What would I say? How would he react? And most importantly, would he even be willing to help me? After what felt like an eternity, door opened and Michael stepped out. My breath caught as I saw him. He looked older, of course, but there was no mistaking the confident stride, the piercing blue eyes, and the easy smile that had once drawn me to him. "Olivia," he said, his tone warm but curious. "Wow, it's been a long time." I stood, forcing a smile. "It has. Thanks for agreeing to meet with me. He gestured toward his office. Come on in. Let's catch up. I followed him inside, my stomach churning. His office was tidy and professional, with framed certificates on the walls and a large desk covered in neatly arranged papers. He motioned for me to sit in one of the chairs opposite him and took his place behind the desk. So Michael began, leaning back in his chair. What brings you here after all these years? I took a deep breath, my hands gripping the edges of my chair. Michael, this isn't a casual visit. I came because I need your help. His brow furrowed. Help? With what? I hesitated, the words caught in my throat. But there was no point in delaying the inevitable. It's about my son, Jamie. Michael's expression shifted to one of cautious curiosity. Okay, what about him? I swallowed hard. There's a possibility that you might be his father. The words hung in the air, heavy and unrelenting. Michael blinked, his face a mask of disbelief. What? He said finally, his voice low. Olivia, are you serious? I am, I said, my voice trembling. I didn't know for sure until recently, and even now, I'm not certain. But there's a chance. He sat back in his chair, running a hand through his hair. This is a lot to process. Why are you just telling me now? Jamie's, what, 12? Because I didn't know. I exclaimed, my voice breaking. When we were together, I didn't think this would ever come up. I met Eric shortly after, and he's been Jamie's father in every way that matters. I never wanted to disrupt that. Michael stared at me, his expression unreadable. But now it's come up, he said quietly. Why? Jamie found out, I admitted. It came out during a family dinner, completely out of the blue. And now he's demanding answers. He deserves to know the truth. Michael leaned forward, resting his elbows on the desk. What do you need from me? I need you to take a paternity test, I said. If there's even a chance that you're his father, we need to know for sure. He nodded slowly, though his expression remained conflicted. Test. Okay. I can do that. But Olivia, what happens after that? If I am his father, what then? I don't know, I admitted, tears stinging my eyes. I don't have all the answers. But this isn't about me or Eric or even you. It's about Jamie. He's a smart kid, Michael, and he's hurt. He feels like his entire life has been a lie. He needs clarity. He needs closure. Michael sighed, running a hand down his face. I understand. I'll take the test. Whatever the results, we'll deal with it together. For Jamie, relief flooded through me. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You don't know how much this means. The process of arranging the test was surprisingly quick. Michael agreed to visit a clinic in Denver the next day, and I scheduled the same test for Jamie and Eric back in our hometown. The waiting period for the results felt like an eternity, each day stretching longer than the last. Eric remained distant, his interactions with me curt and businesslike. Jamie, too, avoided me, though his bond with Eric seemed stronger than ever. Watching them together was both comforting and painful, a reminder of what was at stake. Sarah checked in on me frequently, her presence a small but much-needed comfort. You're doing the right thing, she said one evening as we sat in my living room. No matter how this turns out, Jamie will know you tried to give him the truth. I hope so, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. But what if the truth destroys everything? Sarah gave me a sad smile. Sometimes the truth hurts, Olivia, but lies always hurt more. 3 days later, the results arrived. The envelope felt impossibly heavy in my hands as I stood in the kitchen, staring at it. I had asked Michael to come over, and he was due any moment. Eric and Jamie were already in the living room, their tension palpable. My hands trembled as I placed the envelope on the counter, too afraid to open it alone. The doorbell rang, and I jumped. I quickly wiped my hands on my jeans and went to answer it. Michael stood on the porch, looking calm but serious. "Hey," he said. "Is it here?" I nodded, stepping aside to let him in. "It's in the kitchen." He followed me, his expression unreadable. When we reached the counter, he picked up the envelope and held it out to me. "You should do the honors." I took a deep breath, my fingers fumbling as I tore it open. The paper inside seemed to burn my hands as I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the words that would change everything. And there it was, the truth. Michael was Jamie's biological father. I looked up, my vision blurry with tears. Michael stared at me, his jaw tightening as he processed the revelation. "So, it's true," he said softly. "It's true," I whispered, my voice breaking. From the living room, Eric's voice called out sharply, "What does it say?" I turned, the paper clutched tightly in my hands, and walked toward the living room. My legs felt like lead as I entered, Michael following close behind. "It's him," I said, my voice trembling. "Michael is Jamie's father." Chapter 5: The Fallout. The room seemed to shrink as my words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. "Michael is Jamie's father," I repeated, my voice trembling. Eric's face hardened instantly. His jaw tightened, his lips pressing into a thin line as his eyes locked onto Michael. Jamie, sitting next to Eric on the couch, turned to look at me. His wide, tear-filled eyes burned with betrayal and anger. Michael, standing behind me, shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware that his presence was both unwelcome and unavoidable. "You're kidding me," Eric said finally, his voice low and cold, like a brewing storm. I shook my head, unable to speak. My throat felt tight, my chest heavy with guilt and fear. "You knew this was a possibility," Eric continued, his voice rising. "And you kept it from me." "From him." He gestured toward Jamie, whose gaze flicked between us, confusion and hurt written all over his face. "I didn't know for sure," I said weakly. "I didn't want to cause unnecessary pain if—" "Unnecessary pain." Eric's voice cut through mine like a blade. He stood abruptly, towering over me. "Unnecessary pain? Olivia, do you have any idea what you've done?" Jamie spoke then, his voice trembling but clear. "So, he's my real dad?" He looked at Michael for the first time, his expression a mix of disbelief and curiosity. "You're my dad?" Michael stepped forward, his hands raised slightly as if approaching a wounded animal. "Jamie, I didn't know," he said softly. "If I had, I promise I would have been here. I didn't know until now." Jamie's face twisted in anger. "You didn't know because Mom didn't tell you," he snapped. "She didn't tell anyone. She lied to all of us." "Jamie," I began, but he cut me off. "No," he shouted, standing now, his small frame shaking with rage. "You lied to me. My whole life, you let me believe something that wasn't true. You let Dad," he stopped, glancing at Eric, his voice breaking. "You let him believe it too." "I thought I was doing the right thing," I said desperately, my hands trembling. "I thought it wouldn't matter, because Eric loves you like his own." "It does matter," Jamie yelled, his voice cracking. "It matters to me. Don't you get that?" Michael stepped closer, his presence steady but unsure. "Jamie, I know this is a lot to take in," he said gently. "But I want to be here for you, if you'll let me." Jamie turned on him, his anger spilling over. "I don't even know you," he shouted. "You're just some guy who showed up after 12 years. You're not my dad." Michael flinched, his face falling. "I know this is hard," he said quietly, "but I'm not going anywhere now." "Enough," Eric said, his voice cutting through the tension like a knife. He turned to Michael, his eyes blazing. "You've said your piece. Now get out." "Eric," I started, panic rising in my chest. "Please, don't." Eric's voice was sharp and final. He turned to me, his expression hard. "You brought this chaos into our lives, Olivia. You lied, and now we're all dealing with the fallout. But I won't have him here in my house." He pointed at Michael. "Leave." Michael hesitated, looking at Jamie one last time. I'm not trying to cause trouble, he said. I just want to be part of his life. This isn't your decision, Eric said firmly. Get out. No. Michael looked at me, his eyes searching mine for some sort of support. Olivia. I swallowed hard, caught between two storms. Maybe it's best if you go for now, I said quietly. Michael's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Fine. But this isn't over. I want to be part of Jamie's life, and I'll do whatever it takes to make that happen. He walked to the door, his footsteps heavy, and left without another word. The sound of the door closing echoed through the house, leaving an unbearable silence in its wake. After Michael left, the tension didn't lessen. It grew sharper, more suffocating. Eric paced the living room, his fists clenched at his sides, while Jamie sat on the couch, his arms crossed and his face red with frustration. What now, Olivia? Eric asked bitterly, finally stopping to glare at me. What's your plan for fixing this? Because I'm done cleaning up after your lies. I'm trying, I said, my voice trembling. I'm doing everything I can to make this right. Right? Eric laughed bitterly. There's no making this right. You lied to me for 12 years. You lied to him. He gestured toward Jamie. This isn't something you just fix. You broke us. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I didn't argue. He was right. I had broken us, and I had no idea how to put the pieces back together. Jamie stood abruptly. I can't do this, he said, his voice shaking. I need to get out of here. Jamie, I called after him as he stormed out of the room. Please wait. But he was already gone, slamming his bedroom door behind him. I stood there frozen as the weight of everything came crashing down on me. Eric's voice broke the silence. I'm leaving, he said quietly. What? I turned to him, panic flaring. Eric, please. I need space, he said, his voice cold. I need to figure out if I can even stay in this marriage after what you've done. Don't try to stop me. I watched helplessly as he grabbed his keys and walked out the door. The sound of his car starting and pulling away felt like. That night, I sat alone in the kitchen, the silence of the house pressing down on me. Jamie had locked himself in his room, refusing to talk to me. Eric hadn't returned, and I didn't know if he ever would. I stared at the untouched dinner on the table, my appetite long gone. My phone buzzed, breaking the silence. It was a text from Sarah. How are you holding up? Do you need me to come over? I hesitated, then typed back. No, I need to figure this out on my own. But I didn't feel strong enough to figure anything out. The truth had been revealed, but it had brought nothing but pain and destruction. My marriage was hanging by a thread. My relationship with Jamie was fractured, and Michael's sudden reappearance had only added to the chaos. As I sat there, staring at the mess I had created, one thought consumed me. I had to make this right. Somehow, I had to find a way to rebuild what I had destroyed. But deep down, I knew the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, and I wasn't sure I had the strength to face it. Part 6. Picking up the pieces. The house was eerily quiet the next morning. Jamie had gone to school without a word, his cold silence more painful than any argument. Eric hadn't come home. I texted him twice, asking him to talk, but my messages went unanswered. My once perfect life had crumbled into chaos, and I was left to sift through the ruins alone. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at my phone. The reality of Michael's re-entry into our lives was unavoidable. Jamie deserved the chance to know his biological father, no matter how complicated the situation had become. But that didn't make navigating this mess any easier. I needed a plan, a way to address everyone's emotions and start rebuilding what I destroyed. Before I could overthink it, I dialed Sarah's number. She picked up on the second ring. Liv, what's going on? She asked, her voice filled with concern. I need your help, I said, my voice trembling. I don't know what to do. Eric's gone, Jamie won't talk to me, and Michael, he wants to be involved. I feel like I'm drowning. There was a pause on the other end, and then Sarah said firmly, Okay, let's take this one step at a time. First, you need to talk to Eric. Even if he's furious, you can't leave things like this. I've tried, I said, tears stinging my eyes. He won't answer me. Give him time, Sarah said gently. He's hurt. But Liv, you need to let him know you're serious about making this right. And Jamie, I asked, how do I fix things with him? Sarah sighed. Jamie's a smart kid, but he's overwhelmed right now. He needs time to process everything. Don't push him, but don't let him shut you out completely. Let him know you're there when he's ready to talk. Her words gave me some clarity, but they didn't ease the ache in my chest. And Michael? I asked hesitantly. Sarah hesitated. That's tricky. If he's serious about being part of Jamie's life, you'll need to work with him. But Liv, you have to be careful. This isn't just about you and him. It's about Jamie and what's best for him. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Thank you, Sarah. I don't know what I'd do without you. You'll figure this out, she said. You're stronger than you think. Later that afternoon, I decided to take Sarah's advice and focus on one issue at a time. I called Michael. He answered on the first ring, his tone cautious. Olivia. Michael, hi, I said. I wanted to thank you for yesterday. I know that wasn't easy for you. It wasn't, he admitted. But I meant what I said. I want to be part of Jamie's life. I know, I said. And I think he needs that too. But this is going to take time. He's angry and confused right now. I get that, Michael said. But I want him to know I'm here for him. Even if he doesn't want to talk to me yet. I hesitated. Would you be open to meeting with me and Jamie together? I think it might help if we do this gradually. Michael agreed without hesitation. Whatever you think is best. Just let me know when. That evening, I knocked softly on Jamie's bedroom door. Jamie, can we talk? No response. I waited for a moment, then opened the door. Jamie was sitting on his bed, his headphones on, staring at his phone. He didn't look up as I entered. I sat on the edge of the bed, my heart heavy. Jamie, I said gently, I know you're upset, and you have every right to be. But I need you to know how much I love you. That hasn't changed, and it never will. He didn't respond, but I could see the tension in his shoulders. I pressed on. I've talked to Michael. He wants to be part of your life, but only if that's what you want. No one's going to force anything on you. Jamie finally looked up, his eyes filled with tears. I don't know what I want, Mom, he said, his voice cracking. I don't even know who I am anymore. My heart broke at his words. You're Jamie, I said, placing a hand on his shoulder. You're smart and kind and brave. And no matter what, you have a family that loves you. That hasn't changed. But it has, he said, tears spilling down his cheeks. Dad isn't my real dad. Everything I thought I knew was a lie. Eric is your dad, I said firmly. Maybe not biologically, but he's been there for you every step of the way. That's what makes a father. Jamie wiped his eyes, his anger softening slightly. I don't know if I want to meet Michael. And that's okay, I said. You don't have to decide right now. But when you're ready, I'll be here to help you. He nodded, and for the first time in days, I saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. The next day, Eric finally responded to one of my messages. He agreed to meet me at a nearby coffee shop, though his tone remained distant. I arrived early, my stomach churning with nerves. Eric walked in, his expression unreadable. He sat across from me, his arms crossed. What do you want, Olivia? I want to make things right, I said, my voice trembling. I know I've hurt you. I've hurt Jamie, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I need you to know that I'm trying. Eric stared at me for a long moment before speaking. Do you even understand what you've done? He asked, his voice low and pained. You didn't just lie to me. You let me build a life with Jamie, thinking he was my son. And now you've ripped that away. I didn't mean to hurt you, I said, tears streaming down my face. I thought I was protecting everyone. I was wrong. You're damn right you were wrong, Eric snapped, his voice rising. Do you have any idea how much this has messed with Jamie? He doesn't know who he is anymore because of you. I'm trying to fix it, I said desperately. I've spoken to Michael. He's willing to take this slowly for Jamie's sake. Eric shook his head, his anger giving way to exhaustion. I don't know if I can do this, Olivia. I don't know if I can forgive you. Please, I begged. Don't give up on us. On Jamie. He needs you, Eric. More than ever. Eric looked away, his jaw tightening. I'll think about it, he said finally. But I'm not making any promises. As he left, I felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't forgiveness, but it was a start. Back at home, Jamie emerged from his room. Mom, he said hesitantly, if I meet Michael, will you be there? Of course, I said, pulling him into a hug. I'll be with you every step of the way. As I held him close, I realized that healing wouldn't happen overnight. But for the first time, I felt like we were on the path to rebuilding, not just for Jamie, but for all of us. Chapter 7, A New Beginning. The date Jamie agreed to meet Michael felt like a cautious step forward, though the air in the house remained heavy with uncertainty. Eric still hadn't returned home, and the rift between us felt vast and unbridgeable. But Jamie was my priority now. If nothing else, I owed him honesty and stability, no matter how fractured our lives had become. We arranged to meet Michael at a park near his office, a neutral place where Jamie could feel at ease. The morning of the meeting, I tried to prepare him as best I could. You don't have to say or do anything you're not ready for, I told him as we sat in the car. This is your space to ask questions or just listen. Whatever you need. Jamie nodded, though his hands fidgeted nervously in his lap. What if I don't like him? He asked softly. Then that's okay, I said, my heart aching for him. But this is about you, Jamie. You get to decide how this relationship looks, or if you want one at all. He didn't respond, his gaze fixed on the horizon. I didn't push him. Instead, I drove us to the park in silence, giving him the space he needed to process everything. Michael was already there when we arrived, standing by a bench under a tall oak tree. He looked nervous but composed, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets as he watched us approach. When Jamie hesitated, I placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. We'll go together, I said. We walked over, the three of us standing in an awkward triangle. Michael offered a small smile. Hi, Jamie, he said, his voice gentle. It's really nice to finally meet you. Jamie looked at him, his expression guarded. Hi. Michael glanced at me, then back at Jamie. I know this must be really strange for you, he said, and I don't want to overwhelm you. But I want you to know that I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. Jamie shuffled his feet, his gaze dropping to the ground. Why didn't you know about me? He asked quietly. If you're my dad, why didn't you ever try to find me? Michael sighed, his face clouding with regret. Because I didn't know you existed, he admitted. Your mom and we were only together for a short time, and when things ended, I moved away. If I had known Jamie, I promise you, I would have been here. Jamie nodded slowly, his expression softening just a fraction. Okay, he said, though his tone still carried a trace of skepticism. Michael crouched slightly, meeting Jamie's eyes. I'm not asking you to call me Dad or to feel a certain way about me. I just want to get to know you, at whatever pace feels right for you. Jamie studied him for a long moment. What do you do? He asked suddenly. For work, I mean. Michael smiled, sensing the opportunity to connect. I run a small tech company. We design apps and software for businesses. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but I love it. Do you like computers? Jamie shrugged. I guess. I play video games a lot. Michael's smile widened. What's your favorite game? As Jamie hesitantly started talking about his favorite games, I stepped back, letting them have the space to bond. It was a tentative start, but it was a start nonetheless. Over the next few weeks, Jamie and Michael began to build a cautious relationship. Michael visited once or twice a week, and their conversations became more relaxed and natural with each visit. Jamie still kept his walls up, but I could see them beginning to crack. Eric, however, remained distant. Though he came home a few nights a week, he stayed in the guest room, his interactions with me limited to logistical matters about Jamie. It was clear that our marriage was hanging by a thread, and I didn't know how to save it. One evening, after Jamie had gone to bed, Eric approached me in the kitchen. His face was tired, his shoulders slumped, but his eyes carried the same fire I'd seen in him since the truth had come out. "We need to talk," he said. I nodded, my heart racing. "Okay." Eric sat down at the table, gesturing for me to join him. "I've been thinking a lot about everything," he began. "About you, about Jamie, about us." I swallowed hard, bracing myself. And he looked at me, his expression unreadable. "I'm still angry, Olivia. I'm angry about the lies, about the betrayal, about how this has upended everything we built together. But I'm also angry because I still love you, and I don't know how to reconcile that." Tears welled in my eyes. "Eric, I know I've hurt you. I know I've broken your trust. But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to fix this, if you'll let me." Eric was silent for a long moment before he said, "I don't know if I can ever trust you the same way again. But Jamie, he needs stability right now. And no matter what happens between us, we need to put him first." "I agree," I said quickly, relief flooding through me. "He's the most important thing." Eric nodded, his gaze softening slightly. "Let's focus on him for now. The rest, we'll figure out later." It wasn't a reconciliation, but it was a step forward. And for the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope. As the weeks turned into months, our lives slowly began to stabilize. Jamie continued to spend time with Michael, though their relationship remained tentative. Eric and I worked on co-parenting, putting Jamie's needs above our own emotions. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. One evening, Jamie approached me in the living room. "Mom," he said hesitantly, "do you think it's okay if I call Michael Dad sometimes? I mean, I know Eric's my dad too, but—" I smiled, my chest tightening with emotion. "Jamie, you can call him whatever feels right to you. But just know, no matter what, you're lucky to have two people who care about you so much." He nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Thanks, Mom." As I watched him walk away, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't felt in months. The road ahead was still uncertain, but we were moving forward, together. And sometimes that's all you can do.